Kevin, are we live?
Yes, we are.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Christine Kiang, and I'm with the New England Regional Office of the Small Business Administration. Thank you so much for making time for our PPP Forgiveness Town Hall tonight. So what we have planned for you is a tight agenda. We have great speakers, and we have about 30 minutes of content. And at about 6:30, we're going to actually open up the event for live Q&A. We've been fielding questions all week across social media channels, but we also want to encourage all the attendees tonight to actually use the Zoom Q&A function, question and answer function in the top right corner of your page to ask your questions. This will actually allow your questions to be public and for us to respond in a way where other people who might find your questions useful to also see the response. And so with that, I'm happy to kick off the event and introduce our moderator this evening, who is Wendell Davis, the New England Regional Administration of the SBA. Wendell, over to you.
Thank you, Christine, for that introduction, and thank you for kicking things off tonight. And good evening, everyone that is with us, and actually good afternoon for a lot of folks, because it's my understanding we're broadcasting live from coast to coast. And I'm told we have over 1,000 small businesses that have jumped on this call tonight, and that's just truly amazing, and it's truly a blessing. You know, as you mentioned, Christine, we have an incredible lineup tonight. We have some great speakers, some inspirational, some informative, which I'm really anxious to get to. But before we do that, just let me do two things. First, a huge shout out to the Gold House for helping the SBA pull this event together. You know, thank you, Kaylin, for you and your team, and you know, the relationship. We're just starting out, and I can't wait for that relationship to grow. Secondly, let me highlight just three things here. One, $130 billion. That's what's left, folks. And we have until August 8th. That's the deadline for applications. And, you know, the PPP program has helped over 5 million small businesses to date. And we need to add another 1,000 or so just tonight. Second thing, forgiveness. You know, technically, the PPP program is a loan. But now that the Flexibility Act has been signed into law, there is no reason why that the loan that you receive, there's no reason that should not be 100% forgivable. Listen closely tonight as we tell you how to make this program work for you as a grant for you and your small business. And the third thing, a theme, if you will, you don't have to do this alone. Everyone on this call tonight is here to help you. You know, we're collectively going to talk about all of the great resource partners that exist to help you through these difficult times. So let's get started. You know, our first speaker tonight, I mentioned the Gold House. You know, it was just a few days ago that our first guest and the SBA, we signed a strategic alliance memorandum. And Kaylin, I don't think the ink can't be dry on that document. And here we are, just days later, already engaging small businesses, you know, both of our organizations working together to perform outreach. You know, our missions perfectly aligned. It is my pleasure to introduce the Chief of Staff of Gold House and the Director of the All of Us movement, Kaylin Shibata.
Thanks so much, Wendell, for that introduction, and the enthusiasm is likewise. This has been a initiative that we've been very excited to be partnering on. My name is Kaylin Shibata. I am the Chief of Staff of Gold House and the Director of the All of Us movement. Gold House is a nonprofit collective of diverse leaders dedicated to forging stronger bonds that empower Asians to lead authentic, successful, and healthy lives, and in turn advance all of society. Our ventures include supporting authentic representation in Asian media, entrepreneurship and business, and advocating for allyship across all minority groups. This last initiative is fully expressed through our initiative, the All of Us movement. The All of Us movement unites communities to fight together for marginalized communities who are often disproportionately impacted by pandemics, economic hardship, and social injustice. COVID-19 disproportionately impacted minority-owned small businesses, and these businesses also had surprisingly low numbers to PPP. We are privileged to be partnering with the SBA to help spreading important PPP application information in time for this deadline. So now it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Jeff Staple, who will be sharing his unique story on entrepreneurship and navigation during this time. A bit background on Jeff. Jeff is the founder of Reed Art Department, formerly Staple Design Studio, at Stable Pigeon, a pioneering streetwear brand, retail destination Reed Space, and host of Hype Beats Business of Hype podcast. He's also a frequent moderator, lecturer, and keynote speaker at industry panels and conferences. Jeff has taken active steps to include social justice and equity as a priority in his work and continues to expand his positive social contagion worldwide, going on 2 decades and counting. Over to you, Jeff.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Hello, everyone. How you doing? It's an honor for me to be here to speak to you guys. I am by far the most unintelligent person on this panel, so I feel really like an inferiority complex here. I'm a designer, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a small business owner. I think when they reached out to me to ask me to speak on this, I was sort of confirming if they had the right number first and foremost. One is because I've never worked with the Small Business Association. I've never gotten a loan from the SBA. And I think my story of how I started the business is very non-traditional. And they were like, "You're perfect. We want you to share your story." So I'll talk a little bit about how I started the brand. And I think a lot of people out there can resonate with some of the hardships that being a small business owner can go through, irrespective of COVID and this global pandemic. I mean, we all know that it was hard to do this before, but now it's another massive obstacle. But I think as business owners and entrepreneurs, there's some masochistic seed inside of our brain that makes us enjoy these obstacles. And if you're gonna make the obstacle higher, we just have to jump one step higher, you know. So I think a lot of us are really rallying around this and doing a lot of positive things. So I started, as Caitlin said, I have a brand, I have a streetwear brand. If you guys don't know what streetwear is, it's okay, I don't blame you. Streetwear is kind of like a new subculture that was born out of hip hop culture, skateboarding culture, and punk rock culture. And if you sort of mix all those things together and you sprinkle in some sneaker culture in there as well, you sort of get what streetwear is today. And if any of you have kids that are under 25 and above 10 years old, they probably know what streetwear is. You've probably had to feel the request for paying some crazy amount for a pair of sneakers. I'm partially responsible for that. I released a sneaker in collaboration with Nike in 2005. That shoe at the time was $100 US. Today, in order to get that shoe, you'd have to cough up about $75,000. It's called the Nike Pigeon Dunk. This is our logo, the pigeon, and the pigeon is on the side of our shoe. So if your kid asks you for that, you can say, "I'd rather send you to Harvard instead of buying you this pair of kicks." So I started my brand in 1997. I was going to Parsons School of Design at the time, which is one of the best design schools in the world. And as the story goes, I was taking a silk screening class. And in the silk screening class, they were teaching you how to make prints, you know, like posters. And I thought to myself, you know, like, posters are cool, but if you live in New York City, no one's ever going to come to your apartment and look at your artwork on your walls. That's just not a thing that, you know, people have access to in inner cities, you know what I mean? But I thought if I put my artwork on a t-shirt and I were then to wear that t-shirt out, thousands, if not tens of thousands of people could see that artwork. So I started bringing in t-shirts instead of canvases in order to print on. And immediately the teacher says, you can't print on t-shirts in here. And I was like, why not? And they're like, you just can't. And I, as most entrepreneurs, hate it when someone says you just can't, and they can't give you a valid reason for that. I hate that BS. So what me and a buddy did was we left the windows of the silkscreen lab unlocked at night. And so me and a friend would break into school with pillowcases filled with t-shirts, and we would bring our t-shirts in through the window. We would then climb in through the 4th floor window of the silkscreen lab, and all night long we would start printing t-shirts. And we were doing this just for fun. You know, I just really wanted to do this so that I can share my art in the most effective way that I thought was possible. Lo and behold, on March 7th, 1997, I wore one of the t-shirts that I printed into a boutique in Soho in New York City. I was a shopper. I walked in, and the manager said, "Hey, that's a cool shirt you're wearing. Where'd you get that?" And I said, "I made it." And he's like, "Wow, if you make 12, we'll sell them in the shop if you're cool with that." And I was like, "Cool." So went back to school, broke back in, printed 12 shirts, like, and actually to get 12 good shirts, I'd have to print like 20 shirts because the process was so riddled with issues. So I printed 12 good shirts, brought them to the store. They sold out right away. And then he ordered 24. And then another store across town in Soho caught wind of the shirts that we're selling. And so they ordered 12 and then 24 and then 36 and then 48. And I was ping-ponging orders back and forth, all the while breaking into school, silk screening shirts all night long. That was what I was doing. I basically had my own little sweatshop going. And then, this was going on for a couple months. And then one night I get a phone call in my home, and this is 1997. So this is a landline. This person called my landline, and it was a guy from Japan. And he says, hey, you make the t-shirts, right? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, what, would you like one? And he's like, yeah, I visited New York. I bought a t-shirt. Now I'm back in Japan and I'd like to order a shirt. I was like, great. Like, how many do you want? He's like, I think I want to order 1,000 shirts. And I was like, oh my God, I got to break into school with like 1,000. Like, how is this going to happen? It's not possible at all. So it was at that moment that, to the extreme joy of my Asian immigrant parents, I decided to drop out of art school, which if you ever want to make Chinese parents really happy, you just drop out of art school, man. And by the way, my website and brand, someone I just saw asked, is staplepigeon.com. So staple, STAPLE, and then pigeon, like the bird.com. So yeah, dropped out of art school, decided I'm going to try to do this 1,000 shirt order. And it worked out really well. The 1,000 became 2,000, became 3,000, and it just started to bubble up. But if anyone is in apparel knows, you only make money when you spend money first. And I'm sure there's a lot of businesses like that where you have to be the first one to bootstrap it, to put, to get your hands dirty. And really, you have to make the first investment yourself. The problem is I had no money. And the other problem is if I ever walked into a bank to try to get a small business loan, here I am, a college dropout art student who was starting a streetwear brand. Like they've never heard of any of this before. And I had no credit and I just no way of being able to get access to this money. And this is what I told the SBA, by the way, last week when we were setting up this call. I was like, are you sure you want them? They're like, yes, we're different now. We would have listened to you. And I was like, okay, great. So, I'm going to tell you how I originally funded it. If you've ever visited a college campus, one thing that you'll see lots of is these kiosks and tables from credit card companies that they set up and they try to get these college kids to sign up for credit cards. I signed up for 8 different credit cards. I maxed all of them out. And I did that thing where when a new credit card says, hey, you should apply for this credit card, but then you can roll over all your other debt into this credit card so that you clear out all your other debt. I kept doing that with credit cards. I ended up getting myself into $185,000 into credit card debt. I mean, I just destroyed my credit rating, obviously, and it was all for the business. And I think that if any of you out there who are starting a business, I think, one advice that I'd like to give is that you have to be willing to risk everything to be able to do this. There's just, it just requires so much passion and dedication in order to make your business succeed. I've been doing it for 23 years now. We now have over 12,000 points of distribution all over the world. We're available everywhere. We just did a collaboration with Nike. We just did a collaboration with Shake Shack and Timberland. It's just incredible, but it really takes that dedication. And I'm glad that now the SBA is here to be able to help small business owners who are in a situation that I was 20 years ago. And so I'm just here to offer some words of wisdom to hopefully, inspire you guys to keep going. If you're, I know a lot of business owners that are feeling the pressure right now, and the pressure cooker is even harder than it's ever been before. But I hate to say it, but if you want your business to succeed, you have to be willing to take a bullet for it. You know what I mean? That's how dedicated you got to be to really make your business succeed. 9 to 5 is really easy, but that's not why we're here. You know what I mean? So get out there and keep fighting the good fight. And I hope everyone stays safe. And I'm going to stick around. So if you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. But I hope my words helped. And I'm going to pass the mic over to the experts now to try to get you guys access to those billions of dollars that are out there for you.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you for that great story and sharing your story, your entire story, except for the breaking into school part. We're fully on board with. No, but you talked about you talked about jumping over obstacles, and clearly this is such a daunting obstacle what we're facing right now with the pandemic. And you're right, just like you, Jeff. There's so many entrepreneurs out there. I mean, they're fighters, and they just want a fighting chance. And the pandemic has kind of taken that away. And really, the PPP loan and some of the other SBA loan products, the EIDL loan, that's there to help folks get that fighting shot, just to get from point A to point B so they can get to the other side, and hopefully things return, to where they were economically. But thank you for that inspiring message. And I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there that are at that one of those stages that you are at, and we're hoping we can help as many as we can to become the Jeff Staples of the world. So thank you again for that. As I mentioned, we have a lot of great speakers, and to the extent you can have PPP superstars, we have a bunch of them on the call tonight. And our next guest is a true superstar, not just because he is the CEO of a bank and he's got the money. So we love our guys that have the money, but for him, this is a mission. He understands how important, and the SBA understands, and John understands how important access to capital is. And he's been a critical part, not just as a CEO of a bank, but being part of our fair share, in the mission to make sure that PPP funds get in the hands of underserved communities, and that all folks are taking advantage of the PPP loan / I'm going to call it / grant. So it's with great pleasure that I welcome John Lewis, the CEO of Harbor Bank of Maryland. Thank you, John.
Great. Thank you, Wendell. And it's great to be here with everyone. Hello. Thank you, Wendell, for that kind introduction. It's great to be here with everyone tonight. PPP is essential in the moment that we're in with small businesses, right? And we want to do everything that we can do to make sure that access is available to eligible applicants here. I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of Our Fair Share, an initiative that we put together with Combs Enterprises, essentially the family office of entrepreneur Sean Diddy Combs. Mr. Combs realized very early on in this process that for this PPP program to really work, it was going to take having a new infrastructure that was able to get to people, get the message out, and distribute this and connect with effective lenders to be able to make this happen. So I will talk about that in a moment, but the key point that I want to express to people, because in many ways we're moving past the process and the application period to trying to look at what happened and what didn't happen, and what were the challenges and why folks didn't get access. And what I implore people to do at this moment is to make sure that if you are eligible, that you apply. The application period is still open. It's open until the 8th of August. So do everything that you can do to understand if you are eligible to apply. Utilize the resources of the SBA and the SBA small business centers. Use MBA's Fight COVID and any number of other resources that are out there at this moment. The other resources that are out there, there are hundreds of people, hundreds and thousands of people who have successfully applied. You probably know them. Have conversations with them. Have conversations with small businesses in your communities. Have conversations with faith-based organizations that have memberships that have gone through, but do everything that you can do in this moment to find out if you're eligible, and if you are, please do apply. So we were drawn into this episode for a couple of reasons. So one, we are one of only a couple community banks in the city of Baltimore. Baltimore is a city with a long history of challenges to economic inclusion, specifically for African Americans. It was very clear to us if we weren't very active and very active quickly, that our city would be challenged to have participation and suffer lingering effects from that. We're proud to say that every eligible application that found its way to us, we processed. But knowing that that work wasn't a specific local opportunity and need, but was a national need, we formed a partnership, as I mentioned before. And our partnership was based on some principles that we had learned from prior work. We formally spent 2 years working with the Small Business Administration and the Milken Institute to understand the Small Business Administration's challenges with respect to providing loan guarantees through its 7A program, its flagship program, to African Americans and Latinos, specifically in Baltimore and Los Angeles, but with those lessons being translatable nationally. And what we understood is really the architecture of the system in this implementation would be challenged. We're talking about an organization that does less than $30 billion annually being asked to do approximately $660 billion in the span of 3.5 months. That is just challenging. It's challenging infrastructure. So, you know, we heard a lot of challenges and criticisms at the very beginning of the PPP program, but understand what was being attempted was something that was unprecedented. And to be where we are today, to still have $130 billion left, and to have mechanisms to be able to participate in this program are essential. Our learnings from the formal study that we did really manifested in 3 different things. One, access to capital challenges are based on literally not having capital, and capital in the right form. If the capital doesn't exist, it's hard to get it to small businesses effectively. But the most important thing that we learned, the thing that often goes unsaid, is that when you're distributing capital to minority communities, there's a real element of trust. And we heard that today a little bit in Jeff's journey here as an entrepreneur, right? He said that I went to a bank and they didn't understand what I did. They didn't understand my market. They didn't understand my product. And we see that often when we talk about access to capital, relationships really do matter. They matter because the person who is providing capital to you, whether it's their own or as an intermediary, has to be able to connect with you, to connect with your business, connect with your opportunities. And even more than that, when you have a special level of work that you're doing that implies some level of intentionality, that is to say, when you walk into my bank, I really want to figure out a way to give you capital. When those kinds of things are brought together, then you have a real distribution of capital that happens that is quite effective. And that's what we tried to do. So what I would tell you, to be brief, when we built Our Fair Share, and you can go to ourfairshare.com and find the website, we were focused on solving one simple but not simple problem. And that was that we knew there would be eligible businesses that for whatever reason and inefficiency would not be able to apply to the SBA through the PPP program. If you go to ourfairshare.com and you are eligible, your application will go to a lender who wants to lend you the money. So that is what we have solved in this equation. Again, there should be no question as to whether an eligible business on this call or one that you know can find a lender who will take their application. Please go to ourfairshare.com. It will take you through the process and it will connect you with a lender who will take your application formally and process that application for you. What I will say though, the last piece is that we do have challenges with respect to access to capital because of the nature of minority small businesses. Over 90% of African American small businesses don't have a single employee. So when you get to financing scenarios, when you get to things that require, a finance division and significant amounts of real human capital in that space, things that are done on a first come, first served basis, or things that are done with some level of financial complexity need assistance, right? So in this scenario, one of the things that we are happy that's been brought to bear is the SBA is a real partner in providing technical assistance to small businesses to ensure that they can have their applications prepared and ready to go. And you will hear from some other folks on the call who are providing technical assistance as well. But please avail yourself of technical assistance, avail yourself of lenders, whether that's through relationships or whether that's through the SBA's referral site or Our Fair Share. And by August 8th, if you are eligible, please submit your application. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for that sage and important information and advice. It's truly important information and incredible insight. ourfairshare.com. I can tell you with a lot of confidence that after all is said and done, ourfairshare.com is one word is going to sum it up: impact. The word impact. You guys, when all is said and done, we add everything up. You guys are going to have an incredible impact on so many different folks, small businesses, and the lives that make up those small businesses. So thank you again, John. So now for some technical information. So we have Abby Gonzalez. Abby comes to us tonight from the Houston office of the Small Business Administration. She is a fixture in her community in Houston, and she's been engaged in amazing outreach work in Houston. So Abby's going to present a slide deck on everything you need to know about the PPP loan program. And to the extent there's still questions, we're going to have, as Christine mentioned, a Q&A session afterwards. Abby, it's all yours. Take it away.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. Christine, it looks like I'm not able to share. I need to be made a host so that I can share my screen and my presentation. So if the current host can make me a host, that would be helpful.
Hey, Abby, no worries. Kevin is working on it. Why don't you?
Okay. There we go. I'm good.
Perfect.
I'm good to go.
Perfect.
Thank you all. So again, hello everyone. Thank you all for joining us. This is some really great information. And again, like everyone has said, just to reiterate what everyone has said, don't count yourself out. Don't get overwhelmed by this information. There is millions of dollars left. You need to get your slice of the pie, and we're here to help you. I am going to take about 10 minutes to talk about the PPP program. So it's going to be really fast, straight to the point, but don't forget, we're here to help you. I'm going to talk about some of the resources that are here for you as well. And we will do Q&A. So don't get overwhelmed by all the information I'm about to give you. So again, reiterating, the application deadline has been extended to August 8th. Make sure you apply by August 8th to get your PPP funding. So first off, eligible businesses, any small business concern that meets the SBA size standards. A lot of people will say under 500 employees means you're a small business. Well, technically, yes, but the SBA size standards vary based on your industry. So make sure you are aware of the size standard if you think you may have too many employees or too much revenue. Sole proprietors are eligible, independent contractors, self-employed persons. For any business with a NAICS code that begins with 72, which is the food service industry, that has more than one physical location and employees less than 500 per location, a very important distinction. Any 501c3, 501c19 veteran org or tribal business concern is eligible. You can apply through any existing SBA 7A lender. You do not have to use your principal bank. You do not have to use a bank that you have an existing account with, although some lenders may require that you have an existing account with them. You can go somewhere else. You don't have to use them. You can consult with your local lender as to whether it's participating in the program. And we've shared in the chat, I saw that this was asked earlier, the link has been shared in the chat so that you can go find an SBA lender through the SBA's lender match tool. So you can find a lender to apply with. The PPP loan, although we keep saying loan, is 100% forgivable. How? If you use 60% or more for payroll, 40% or less for rent, utilities, mortgage interest, maintain your full-time equivalents or FTE if you had layoffs, and didn't reduce wages by more than 25%, your loan can be 100% forgivable. So keep that in mind. Although this is a loan program, although this comes from the SBA, it can be 100% forgivable. So look at these 4 bullets here, make sure you follow them, and you can get that 100% forgiven. So it's essentially a grant at that point. The loan amount is 2.5 times your monthly payroll from 2019. If you're a sole proprietor or independent contractor, that means line 31 of your 1040. You have up to 10 months after the covered period ends to apply for forgiveness with your lender. So additional guidance from the SBA is forthcoming. The SBA recently announced that it would begin accepting the PPP forgiveness applications from lenders on August 10th, I believe. But you do have up to 10 months after your covered period ends to apply for that forgiveness. So there is no rush, although you do need to make sure you apply within that 10 months, or the loan does become a regular loan that can no longer be forgiven. Very quickly, I wanted to show you guys the easy forgiveness application. The new easy forgiveness application was provided by the SBA as something that certain businesses are able to utilize. The main factor in this that I wanted to share is that if you are a sole proprietor and you don't have any employees, you can use the easy forgiveness application instead of the regular forgiveness application. And the easy forgiveness application is only 3 pages, and you're seeing all 3 here. Only 1 page of the easy application actually asks for figures from your business. And you'd see here in this bottom section of the first page, that is it. It asks you, how much did you spend on payroll? How much did you spend on mortgage interest, rent, utilities, forgiveness amounts? And then you're finished. You're totally done. The next 2 pages, one is full of certifications. You'll read them and initial that you understand what you're signing. The last page has some demographic information that is totally voluntary, so you don't even have to fill that part out if you don't want to. If you're a sole proprietor, you can use the easy forgiveness application, sole proprietor with no employees. You can use this application, and you can see right here, that is why I wanted to share it with you. It's super easy and straightforward. You'll submit this directly to your lender to apply for that forgiveness. Very quickly, the recently signed PPP for Flexibility Act was signed by Congress on June 5th, and it established several new flexibility measures to make it easier for the individuals using the PPP program. There are 6 FTE reduction expenses. Again, FTE is full-time equivalents, and any FTD reductions in these cases do not reduce your forgiveness. So very important, any employees during their covered period, which means when you received your loan, your funds from the PPP, if you made a good faith written offer to rehire an employee and it was rejected by the employee, if the employee was fired for cause, if the employee voluntarily resigned, if the employee voluntarily requested and received a reduction of their hours, if the borrower made a good faith written offer to restore any reductions in hours at the same wage or salary, but the employee rejected, if the borrower was unable to hire similarly qualified employees for unfilled positions by December 31st. Any reductions in staff in these cases will not reduce your forgiveness. Very important to read over these and see if they apply to you, because we've gotten a lot of questions about this. What if I had to fire someone? What if they voluntarily resign? Does that mean that I won't get my loan forgiven? No. So make sure you read through these reduction exceptions. These are exceptions to those rules for the forgiveness. And a couple of FAQs, I literally just put a couple two here because I know we're going to do Q&A, but I wanted to share this with you because some people who applied for PPP before July 5th, when the PPP Flexibility Act was signed, had a 8-week covered period instead of a 24-week covered period. And that is because the act changed the covered period from 8 weeks to 24 weeks. So the question we get often is, can we switch from the 8-week covered period to the 24-week covered period if we received our funds before July 5th? The answer is yes, but you must seek mutual agreement from the lender. So that being said, you must speak with your lender, being the one you got your PPP loan from. Second, when can lenders begin submitting loan forgiveness applications to the SBA? Beginning August 10th. So remember, you have up to 10 months after your covered period has ended to apply for forgiveness. Beginning August 10th, the SBA will begin accepting those applications from the lenders. Now, you've gotten a high-level overview of PPP. I gave you a whole ton of information. You're probably pretty overwhelmed right now, but don't worry. The SBA has resource partners who offer free and virtual advising sessions Again, this is totally free of charge. The Small Business Development Center, SCORE, and the Women's Business Center offer assistance related to PPP applications and PPP forgiveness. You can speak with them about your specific questions related to your business, and they can help walk you through the process. And during today's webinar, you'll also learn about other organizations that are here to help you. So you are not alone. Although this information may seem overwhelming or you may not know where to start, you're not alone. We're here to help you. We want you to get your loan forgiven. That is what we are here for, and we are here to provide that support. As Wendell mentioned, I actually work out of the Houston district office, and there is a district office in every state. There are several in Texas, being that it is such a large state, but I am out of Houston, and we do weekly PPP forgiveness webinars in English and Spanish. Feel free to join us. I will put our link in the chat box. You can visit our website where we list our weekly webinar schedule. Feel free to join one of our webinars. Again, we offer those every week, English and Spanish, so that you can learn how to get 100% forgiveness of your PPP loan. And that is the end of my presentation. I tried to make it super short and sweet so that you would get the gist of the information, and we are here to answer your questions from the chat and the Q&A.
Great. Thank you, Abby. Thank you for that great information and concise information. We like concise, and the Q&A, if we've missed anything, we can pick it up in that Q&A session. So Abby talked about resource partners, and I think either the last slide or second to last slide, listed the SBDC folks, our SCAR folks, our women's business centers. If you go on the SBA.gov website or any district office website and type in Small Business Administration in your state, you're going to see links to those folks that can help you out. You can call the SBA directly, and they'll help you link you with folks in your communities. But there's another resource partner that's been critically important to helping us in the East, and just overall the SBA's outreach to underserved communities, and that's MBA's Fight group. In this case, Fight COVID. Our next guest is the founder of MBA's Fight and currently a student at Harvard Business School. His group has marshaled over 1,000 MBAs from 20 MBA programs nationwide to provide short-term consulting support. We've worked hand in glove with these folks, and they've been truly amazing. And they're there and answering all questions, and they will literally go through the application with you and help you all the way through the process. And the results speak for themselves. They've helped in this short period of time, they've helped over 1,400 small businesses and 300 nonprofits during this economic crisis. The results speak for themselves. And with that, Scott, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Wendell, for that kind introduction. So as Wendell mentioned, my name is Scott Kara, and I'm a student at Harvard Business School. I'm also one of the co-founders of MBA's Fight COVID, a nonprofit that we started in March that matches MBA student volunteers to provide one-on-one support with small business owners around all the things that we're talking about today: PPP applications, PPP forgiveness. And look, I know there's a lot of resources out there for Get Your Help, and we're happy for you to go wherever you want to get the assistance you need. But if you have that nuanced question, or if you're having trouble getting over the finish line, that's where our students can really jump in and help. We have over 1,000 students, as Wendell mentioned, that have worked with over 1,400 small businesses. We work with partners like Our Fair Share and the City of Detroit, among others. Our process is really simple. So to get help, just go online and fill out a very short online Google form. We'll send it out after this webinar. From there, we will match you with a student. The student will reach out within a couple of days to assist you however they can and help you get over the finish line. That's it. So if you are still looking to apply to PPP before that August 8th deadline, and I would recommend starting that process now, because it will take some time to get the application to the SBA, so you should start well before August 8th. Or if you have PPP and you're looking to get it forgiven, and you have a really nuanced question about how to do that appropriately, and like Wendell said at the top, I want to reiterate, it's very likely you can get these 100% forgiven. Fill out our form, and we'll get a student volunteer to reach out and provide assistance. We just want to be another resource to help you all get through this. Thanks.
Thank you, Scott. We appreciate all that you've done and helped us in just in the Northeast. I know you're all across the nation. Now our closer, another PPP superstar. What we're going to call her our closing PPP superstar. You know, John, John, our next guest has the money, and we love our guests that have the money. The CEO of Citizens Bank of Edmond. Well, let me assure you, there's so much more to the story. You know, like John, this is a mission for our next guest, and through our next guest's vision, along with if you will, a Dallas shark, started PPP.bank with the goal of making sure that PPP funds reached underserved markets and the smallest of the small. And our next guest has been at the forefront of that and has done amazing work to make sure that the PPP program has worked for all folks. It is with great honor that I welcome our next guest, Jill Castillo.
Thank you so much, Wendell, for that such a generous introduction. This PPP program, we were fortunate to be really at the very beginning of when Congress was looking at what we could do for small businesses. Our bank was able to be at the table conveying what we were seeing on Main Street to our congressional leaders so that a program could be developed to address their needs. And so we were grateful that the speed of action that Congress stepped up to get these funds, although it's not perfect and hasn't served all of our small businesses, it was an incredibly efficient way of getting the money out. And all the community banks and other banks and lenders and fintech companies that had this call to action and really saw ourselves as economic first responders, knowing their healthcare community was called to action. And we really felt as a community bank that we are being called as that secondary line of defense to be there to help save our small business community and utilizing the PPP program. We're a really small program here in a small bank here in Central Oklahoma. We're only 300 million in asset size, 55 team members. So we really were using PPP funds to serve our community, but we're also really active on social media. And as we were touting the program, answering questions, we started to see gaps in access, especially in our minority and female-owned business community, that there wasn't the accessibility to lenders that were providing PPP funds out there. So we started serving as a matchmaker of sort out on social media. Someone would be in Miami, Florida, and say, you know, my bank's not participating, or I don't have access to a lender, and I try to hustle and find someone. And we did that for hundreds of small businesses out there from coast to coast, all through Middle America. Through that interaction, while we were continuing to serve our community and again, matchmaking across the United States, we were able to interact with Mark Cuban, who was also hearing some of the accessibility issues. A lot of these small businesses were very intimidated by the application process of PPP, and whenever forgiveness was starting to come underway, we were both felt a lot of concern as to whether these small businesses that struggle with the application, whether they would be able to achieve forgiveness by going through that forgiveness application. We wanted to ensure that that access to this as a grant rather than the debt service burden that a loan would provide in this time that a lot of small businesses were facing crisis. So through Mark Cuban's ingenuity, he reached out to me and said, Jill, we just have to do something to be able to get an easy way in which this forgiveness application can go kind of automatically provide assistance to small businesses and ultimately produce a PDF that they can provide to lenders. A lot of lenders have automated solutions for their customers like we do here at Citizens Bank of Edmond. We provide our customers with an automated way to go through the forgiveness process, but many small businesses don't have that level of access or that intimacy with a community bank or lender that can guide them through the process. And so PPP.bank was developed, and Tesla was really the star of this story. And Joe, their president and CEO and founder, is on the call as well. But Tesla committed to providing the programming support to develop what was first the 11-page application, a guided application process so small businesses could go through a secure website which we were all committed to not profiting at all through this, not collecting any data, not selling any data, but really truly giving a pristine application process for forgiveness for small business to be able to access. Mr. Cuban provided us the financial support so that we can actually handle all of the businesses that apply for a PPP loan and now will be going through forgiveness can access the site. Again, we don't retain any data or even know anything other than the number of hits to the website, who is achieving forgiveness or pursuing forgiveness, but takes the small business owner from the very beginning of uploading their information to then telling them at the end and guiding them through worksheets so that it produces the application as well as whatever supporting documents that the applicant needs to provide their lender. And then in PDF form, they can email that to their lender or they can print it off and provide it to them. We have seen such great response. I mentioned Tesla, from the idea that Mark Cuban had to having a PPP forgiveness application online. In 10 days, they had that up and running out there for our small businesses to use. Last month, we had over 200,000 visits to that site, and that's even with there being a change in the forgiveness application. And so it is up and ready to run now. So Tesla was amazing. They're a great startup from Arkansas that developed a wonderful tool, just really out of the kindness of their heart to help small businesses. And it is now live. It is ppp.bank. The .bank URL is limited to just banks and some other that are in the financial industry. It's a very rigorous process to get that .bank designation. The FTLD registry within CIRCA that issues the .bank, what it provides us by having that ppp.bank extension is that website can't be spoofed. And so while we say we won't have any data collection off of the site, it would have been easy for someone to come in and potentially take that precious data from our small businesses. So having that .bank URL gives us the assurance that the website can't be spoofed and that we can have the level of security and data integrity that we're looking for. This site, again, is for those that maybe don't have access to a bank or lender that would give them more of a guided method of going through the application, but is for those that don't have that level of intimacy with their lender. It also is a great tool for CPAs. We have a lot of independent CPAs that have vetted the tool with us and that they're using it for their customers. So they're not having to go and invest in some expensive tool for the short-term solution, and that they can use it as much as they would like. And we also love to get feedback on the tool, how it can be improved. So you can always tag me out on Twitter or LinkedIn, and I will pass it along to the Tesla team how that can be improved. But it was a great testimony of this team coming together, a group of like-minded companies, just wanting to assist small businesses, really with absolutely no personal benefit or professional benefit from it, but just more this call to action. And I think it really shows with the economic engine of America is our small businesses. And when we look at unemployment, yes, we can target large companies and that helps our employment whenever we can keep that, we can invest and provide bailouts or assistance or whatever it may be, but nothing is like helping the small business community. It's the greatest employer of Americans. It's the greatest engine behind our economy. And so to see this tool to be able to use and deploy it to this great asset for America, as well as be able to deploy the funds and ensure the forgivability of the PPP program by utilizing efficiently, was just really magical to see coming together. And you know, we continue to be an advocate, all members of this team do, to continue to assist our small businesses and look for other ways in which we can assist them through this crisis. But what I will tell you is it's been absolutely remarkable to hear the stories of the business in the Bronx that is the multiple generation that is enduring through this crisis because of the PPP funds. I can look down the street of Main Street right through my window right now and see dozens of businesses that were saved because of the PPP program, and to have a way in which forgiveness can go through by using the ppp.bank. There's other tools available out there. I would caution you that as you are looking for online tools or to process your PPP application, just be really careful about your data to ensure it's not being sold, that it is not going to be retained, that this is data that you continue to own with such sensitive information such as your payroll, the number of employees that you have, your profitability. It's really important that you keep that data safe and secure. It's such an honor to be here today. You're always welcome to reach out to me. My handle, I think, is in my name right here, but it's at Jill Castilla. You are welcome to DM me. I will give you my cell phone number out on Twitter if you want to reach out to me, and I'd be happy to support you through this process. But again, grateful for all the great feedback we have. Thank you so much for caring about your business enough to be part of today's town hall, and the SBA and all the resources that they've brought together is just really inspiring to be a part of.
Thank you, Jill. That was wonderful. Your enthusiasm is infectious, and you will always be welcome as a small business ambassador to my region over here in New England. I'm sure anywhere in the country. We can always use a couple extra branches. I know you're a small bank in Oklahoma, but you can always use a couple extra branches in New England. Thank you for that great message, and again, being an ambassador for small businesses and all that mission work you're doing. And so, in closing, before we get to the Q&A, I just want to thank. I was going to call everybody our speakers, the incredible speakers, but I'm going to borrow and maybe steal a phrase from Jill, our economic first responders, because that's exactly what Kaylin, John, Abby, Scott, and Jill are. Our economic first responders. And I thank you for jumping on the call today. And then, Christine, if you're ready, let's fire away with some questions, Q&A.
I'm always ready. All right. So I have some great news. So in the last hour, we have had over like 1,000 people attend this event. We capped out on Zoom. People are watching on YouTube, Facebook. They're tweeting, Jill, they're tweeting at us on Twitter. And so this audience, part of the Q&A, it's actually going to be an amalgamation of questions I've been collecting over the last hour. So for the folks who've been waiting, we're going to do our best to answer your questions now. All right. So first question. Hey, Wendell, I'm going to give it to you. A lot of folks are currently on unemployment, and so they're asking if they're eligible for PPP, and also what to do when the unemployment benefits run out. Wendell?
Great question. You're gonna give me the tough questions, I guess, huh? Yeah, no. So there definitely is that balancing act, whether or not unemployment insurance, especially with that kicker. I call it the kicker, the extra $600 per week that's added in. So that's definitely a balancing act. You got to look at, does PPP make sense, and how much can you recover through PPP or unemployment? And one thing I do want to emphasize, and this is separate from your question, Christine, is that if you're self-employed, if you're the sole proprietor, the sole owner with maybe 1 or 2 employees, you can collect your salary. You can pay yourself through the PPP. And I think that's missed on a lot of the smallest of the small businesses. And I think I saw some of the Q&A as it was coming through talking about how they got a PPP loan through their employee, but not for themselves. So I would urge you to reach out to some of the folks on this call to make sure that you've gotten everything that you're eligible for. But so in that balancing act, so we're coming up on the deadline or the expiration of the unemployment insurance, that kicker, that's extra $600 per week. There's still, the existing unemployment benefits that are out there, but that $600 kicker will go away on July 31st. So the deadline for PPP is August 8th. So there is this period of time where if you do decide, and you are doing that analysis, and you're working with somebody to look at what makes sense now that the July 31st kicker for unemployment is gone, when you balance that out against the PPP, what makes sense for you? So we urge folks to speak with somebody, one of the resource partners that are out there, to do that analysis, because it may make sense. It may make sense to go with the PPP. If you have not done either, and you're a small business owner and you haven't done unemployment or PPP, you need to immediately call somebody right after this webinar and talk with somebody, because you should and need to be taking advantage of one of those things.
Thanks, Wendell. All right, so next we have a question from Cindy, who posted on the hub. So Cindy had to furlough most of her full-time employees, and she's not going to be able to bring everyone back. Abby from the SBA, can you explain how reducing full-time employee count is going to impact her PPP calculation?
Yes, and thank you for that question. That was one that I also read on the hub. Cindy gave us quite a few details about her situation. So first, I'd like to make sure that Cindy, hopefully she's listening on here, is aware that you do still have to pay your employees with PPP, regardless of whether the business was open or closed. I know that that was one detail she gave us, that she hadn't been able to open obviously because of the nature of the COVID disaster. So you need to make sure that you are paying your employees. Now, reducing the FTE, the thing about that is that you will not use the number of FTE that you had at the time of applying for PPP. You will use one of the reference periods that the SBA provides. There are 3 different reference periods, and I will pull up the link to provide that to you, but you will choose one of the reference periods, and you will, for example, one is how many employees you had at the beginning of last year. So if you had 20 employees at the beginning of last year, that's the number of FTEs that you would want to try to stay at to get that forgiveness. Again, remember that to get the 100% forgiveness, you need to utilize 60% or more on payroll, 40% or less on utilities, mortgage, interest, or rent. So make sure that you are utilizing it to its full capacity. And then for the FTEs, remember that during my presentation, I went over the exceptions to the FTE reductions. So reductions in FTE don't automatically mean that your loan will not be forgiven. For example, if you offered an employee their job back and they declined, that will not affect you. So Cindy, I would recommend taking a look at our presentation, taking a look at the PPP webinars, so that you can learn how to calculate your specific FTE and how much you'll get forgiven, because it will be very different for each business. So I will put that in the chat as well for your reference.
Thanks, Abby. All right, so next question. Angela from Zoom, she flagged the fact that her local bank is not accepting PPP applications from folks who didn't already have an account. Hey, John, I'm going to turn this over to you. Talk about our fair share. And John, don't forget to mute yourself. Great.
Sure. I'm here. So absolutely. And we saw this across the board with the program. Actually, we had one customer who said, my family business has been with a certain bank for 75 years. And they're not taking my application. And there are some real banking and regulatory reasons why it would be understandable why a bank might be challenged to take applications. And certainly some banks did as much as they could and got to whatever their internal limits were by the end of it. But again, what I would say is either go to SBA Lender Match, and they will match you with a lender who's still taking applications. Ourfairshare.com is up. You can use the site. The site's simple. It will walk you through and connect you with a lender. It may be a community advantage lender. The term community development financial institution is something we all should understand. We made sure that we connected a few of those to our site to facilitate this, but also we brought in some fintech capacity to be able to meet the demand here. So again, there are a few sites that are out there facilitating the connection to lenders who are still actively looking to lend. The other thing that I would implore people to do is, as we rebuild our economy, as we get to the other side of it, there's a lesson that many of us as entrepreneurs and small business owners and business owners really should have learned from this, and that is relationships matter. So go find a bank like Jill's, go find a community bank like ours, and develop a relationship over time, because that matters certainly when we're talking about smaller businesses and their access not only to capital in good times, but their access to capital in difficult economic times when you really need a bank that's like a partner as well as a banker for you as well.
Thanks, John. So we have a bunch of independent contractors and sole proprietors on our call tonight, and they want to know if PPP loans can be used to pay themselves. Abby, how do sole proprietors prove the use of funds?
Yes, that's a great question. I believe we got that one a whole lot. So for proof of use of funds, sole proprietors can use things like canceled checks, bank statements. What we have seen that has helped people a lot, especially sole proprietors, is that they are creating a bank account just for PPP to make it easier to track what they are using it for and how they're using it. So that may be something that you would like to consider as a sole proprietor. But just know you need to document it very carefully. So if that's a bank statement or a canceled check, just make sure that you have physical proof of how you're utilizing that loan.
Thanks, Abby. All right, so I'm turning it over to our audience on YouTube. So Margaret from YouTube wanted to know that if you're a nonprofit and you've had no income coming in due for the last 3 years, she said, is it okay to use the 990 to apply for PPP? Abby or Rachel?
Yeah, I actually am not clear on that question. Rachel, do you want to take that one?
So I'm not really familiar with that form either, but so she wants to use a 990 form to show her income for her personal income. Is that what she's asking? Do we know? Or
yes, that's
okay.
That's what she posted in the comment.
I think we would probably need to get back to her on that to make sure, because I'm not really that familiar with that form. So I don't want to. Maybe she could email us or.
Okay. All right, Margaret, if you're listening, email region_1@sba.gov, and I'll repost that email. We'll get you an answer.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, next question. So this is from Timothy from YouTube. So his primary challenge has been getting his books for 2018 and 2019 organized and ready. He just wants to know, is there a resource that can help him with accounting? Abby?
Yes, that is a great question. Again, I would always refer back to our SBA resource partners. Our resource partners are funded and approved by the SBA. They're there to help you. It is completely free, and this is exactly the type of question that they would be able to help with. They have expertise in different backgrounds, so they would be able to help you get those documents in order. So make sure that you visit them right away and apply for the PPP before the August 8th deadline.
Thanks, Abby. All right, so we got a question from Ronnie on Twitter about what do you do if you applied for a PPP loan, but you received less than what you're eligible for? Rachel, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Sure. So once the loan is reported to the SBA, there's really no way that we can amend it. However, if the loan has been funded but hasn't been reported yet, then the lender would be able to, request that increase amount. So there is guidance on the PPP, the SBA website, as well as the Treasury website that shows you how to calculate the loan and what size loan you'd be eligible for. So that would be where I would start. And then if you feel like you're eligible for an additional amount than what you received, check with your lender to see if it has been reported to the SBA or not. And if it has not, then they can work with the SBA to try to increase that. If it already has been reported, unfortunately, at this point, there is nothing that can be done for that.
Thanks, Rachel.
Sure.
All right. So Susan from YouTube had a question about getting another loan if you had already received EIDL, if you had already subtracted EIDL from the total loan amount. And I guess taking a step back, maybe Rachel, if you could just even talk about sort of how folks should think about PPP with EIDL, because we have folks who have already gotten PPP who want to apply EIDL and vice versa.
Sure. So For people that got both the PPP loan and the EIDL advance, when SBA is remitting the money, the forgiveness application, processing that and sending it back to the lender, they're going to deduct anything, any amount that was received for the advance from the PPP forgiveness amount. On the loan side, for the EIDL loan part, a borrower can have both a PPP loan and an EIDL loan. The EIDL loan is basically for emergency working capital purposes. It's a direct loan from the Treasury through the SBA. So it's kind of funding separate expenses than the PPP loan, which is specifically for payroll and those other eligible expenses that are allowed under PPP. So as long as you're using it for different funds, you can have both, use both. And the only impact is on the advance portion, which is that $1,000 to $10,000 based on the employees. That part would get deducted from the PPP forgiveness amount.
Thanks, Rachel. So Lisa posted a question about, she had a question about applying for PPP when her payroll was smaller. So she got a small PPP loan, but her business has actually since grown. And she asked if she could reapply for the PPP. Abby, what are her options?
So unfortunately, right now, the guidance does not allow for individuals to reapply or apply again. I know we've gotten this question a lot. Right now, it does not indicate that you can apply again, regardless of the reason. And I also saw that we had a question related to further guidance related to congressional decisions. We are not able to speak to anything that is may or may not be happening in Congress until it actually becomes law. So if that does become something that is signed by the president, then we can speak to it. But right now, the guidance does not allow for anyone to reapply. Now, I would also consider EIDL if you have not already applied for that. That is still actively accepting applications. You can still apply for that program, and we have additional information related to EIDL if you're looking to apply for that program as well.
Christine, if I could comment as well.
Absolutely, John.
So one of the things that has happened in the moment is everyone's become so focused on these disaster lending programs, right? And for many businesses, these are the only real access to capital that they have the possibility of availing themselves of. But we have definitely seen local cases where businesses like the one that just asked the question are growing. And there may be more traditional sources of capital. I'll give you a great example. We have a local manufacturer here who makes cables for fiber optic telecommunications. With everyone being at home, this is a great time for him, right? So I would just say, in addition to thinking about these SBA options, there still may be traditional SBA options. There may be local banking programs and lending programs. There may be state level programs as well. But the idea that you're growing and hiring employees, that is a great thing to hear. And I wouldn't take the idea that there might be traditional financing off the table in that scenario.
Yes, that is a great point. Thank you for adding that.
Thanks, John. So Deborah from YouTube is asking for the PPP application. She was asked how many employees she had, but for the forgiveness loan, oh, okay, sorry. This is me processing as I'm reading. So Deborah basically wants to know how to calculate full-time employees versus part-time employees in her PPP forgiveness app. Rachel, can I turn that to you?
Sure. So there's two options on the full-time equivalent, or the way you calculate a full-time employee is anyone that's working 40 hours or more as one full-time person. For the part-time people, you have the option of counting all part-time people as 0.5, regardless of how many hours they work. Or you can take the portion, how you can take a proportion of the 40-hour week. So, if they're working 30 hours a week, then that would be 75% or 0.75 of an employee. So the important thing is the way you calculate it. You want to calculate it the same way at your reference period versus your covered period. So they made the ease of counting everyone as 0.5 to make it a little easier to account for all part-time employees. But the cutoff is the 40 hours a week or more is full-time. Anything under that is part-time.
Can I add a comment there? This is Joe.
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
If you do ppp.bank, there's a button that'll say use simplified and not simplified. And for those that have part-time employees, it actually could be to your advantage if they were working, let's say 12 hours a week, to use that simplified method, because then the SBA is allowing you to round up to 20 hours. Vice versa, if everyone worked 38 hours, that simplified method would be very bad for you because you would round them down to 20 hours. And so if you want to play around with it, it's a free resource. You can put your hours in and you can toggle a button and it will recalculate your payroll or FTE impact, which, you know, big thing is FTE, of course, is not employees or like it's a full-time equivalent. And that definition is a little weird. Sorry, I just want to throw that comment out there.
I would agree. I think whether you use that tool, you should definitely calculate it both ways to make sure you're maximizing your impact on forgiveness for sure. Thank you for adding that.
Yeah, so we're actually 10 minutes over time and more questions are just flooding in. Like people, we still have like 700 plus people watching us on YouTube. And so I think we're going to take, oh my gosh, more coming in. I think we're going to take maybe two more questions. And then I'm going to use this opportunity though, to just say, we're committed to answering your questions. And so if we didn't answer your question, or if you just want to follow up about any of the resources that you saw tonight, send us an email at region_1. So that's REGION_1 at sba.gov, and we'll get back to you. Okay, so I'm looking at the Zoom chat, and I saw that, so Lisa wants to know, does PPP program apply to small business owners who are starting new businesses during COVID-19? Abby?
I'm assuming that means that you're just starting the business. Unfortunately, no, that would not apply to this business. I would recommend looking into other SBA funding programs like traditional SBA loans, or consulting with your lender to see what options are available for you. But PPP would not be something that you would be eligible for as a brand new business. And I am trying to answer some of these questions in the Q&A to get as many as possible out there.
Yeah, so folks who are still on this Zoom, we've answered, we have a great team of SBA folks and folks from the MBA's Fight who've answered 75 plus questions in the Q&A function, and all the answers are public. So feel free to also click through to see if any of that applies to you. Wendell, we're gonna give you the last one. And this is actually a question that's been kind of coming at us over and over again on Twitter. Folks are asking that they've heard that PPP loans under $150,000 will be automatically forgiven. I'm gonna kind of have you sort of set the record.
Yeah, we can all wish, right? But and Abby kind of alluded to this, because we're an executive agency, our job is to take whatever Congress passes and the president signs and then implement and manage and execute on those laws. So everything that's out there, I've heard those things. Everybody has heard those things. It looks like there's going to be another package coming down the pike, but we can't comment on those things. I mean, those folks need to figure out what they're going to pass, and then we'll execute on whatever they do pass. But what that does mean is, follow the SBA, follow our Twitter account, follow us, because there will be updates coming, and and it may be that we need to do another webinar like this to make sure folks are aware of all of those changes, because there is a lot of talk of some very significant changes that everybody will need to be aware of.
Thanks, Wendell. All right, so with that, I'm gonna just wrap up our call. It sounds like the popular consensus on social media is that we might need to do another one of these, Wendell. Might be volunteering everybody to do this again. But Again, if we didn't answer your question tonight, please send us an email at region_1@sba.gov. We'll also use Twitter to post the resources and the partners that were highlighted today. And I'm actually just going to repeat it all for folks who've been patient with us. So we have a lot of the SBA resources on. So if you go to sba.gov/paycheck protection program, that's where you can see all the official guidance on our program. That being said, we also have great partners in ourfairshare.com. John's waving right now. I don't know if you can see, but ourfairshare.com can also help you find a lender who's still taking PPP applications. We have Jill and Joe representing ppp.bank. And so if you're somebody who has a PPP application, but wanted to start the forgiveness process, we have, of course, the official guidance on the SBA website, but we also encourage you to check out ppp.bank, which is a streamlined way to start that forgiveness process. And last but not least, if you're just kind of listening to all of this and you're just like, I need to talk to someone, and get some help, we have all of the SBA resource partners, the Small Business Development Center, Women Business Development Center, the Veterans Business Outreach Centers, and SCORE. And in addition to that, you've heard from Scott Cara, who started the MBA's Fight Volunteer Organization. And with them, you fill out a simple Google form and a student will call you and help you. And we've actually posted that Google form on the chat, but we're gonna actually just retweet it. And so follow us on Twitter to get the information. And the most important thing to remember is if you're eligible for the PPP, the deadline to get approved for a loan application is August 8th. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Christine.
Thanks, Christine.